This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Tzadi Aleph, and all the learning for the month. The month of Elul has been generously sponsored as a Chos Aliyah Neshama for Aster Rizal Basra Meir B'Siyata D'Shemaya. The learning the entire Chabura as we wind up the fifth parak of Baba Basra should bring Aster Rizal Basra Meir an incredible Aliyas Neshama. So we're holding the second wide line of Sadi Amid Beis, the middle of a lengthy list of braysos, which, as we pointed out at the top of the Amid, the Gemara was makdim with simanim. We pointed out the critical importance of simanim to remember our Torah. But for now, Taner Rabbanim Motzi Bears meets Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to bring peiros out of Eretz Yisrael, Devarim Sheish B'hem Chayi Nefesh, items that are the staples of life. Kigoyin, for example, wine, oil, and flowers. Rav Ben Basra says, no, wine you can bring out. You know why? Because tifla, indecency, leitanos, and pritos is lessened if there's less wine. Just like you can't bring from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, kachin motzim Eretz Yisrael l'Surya. But the Rebbe Matir, what is Rebbe Matir? As you turn over to Sadi Aleph Amid Aleph, Rebbe is Matir mehaparchia laparchia, from one bordering town to another town in Syria, since they're so close, explains the Rashbam in the top line. Therefore, Rebbe says there is no problem transporting from one area to the next. Taner Rabbanan, we continue. In Mishtakim Beretz Yisrael, one may not trade in Eretz Yisrael items that are the staples of life. Kigoyin again, Yinei Shmanim Muslasai, Samru Laval, Rosman Azariah, Shem Mishtaka B'yayin V'Shemin B'yayin V'Shemin. Rosman Azariah Lamaisa would deal with wine and oil in Eretz Yisrael. What's the reason? Explains the Gemara. B'yayin, something like Rav Yehuda, because it's better to decrease wine, to decrease tifla. B'Shemin is why Basra Rosman Azariah, Shchiach Mishcha. Oil was abundant, and therefore there was no concern that dealing with oil would raise the prices, etc. Taner Rabbanan, 3 lines on the wide line. Says the Gemara, you cannot deal twice with eggs. Pamayim bebeitzim. Amar Mari bar Mari pligi bar Rav Ushma. So Mari bar Mari says Rav and Shmuel debated this point. Chad Amar al Chad, a tray. One said that what does it mean? A pamayim bebeitzim, twice with eggs, means you can mark up the prices double from chad to tray, 1 to 2. Chad amar tagar letagra. What this means is you can't resell them merchant to merchant. It can be sold once, but once it's then going to the second level of sale, that's too much, which could cause the prices to rise, skyrocket, and thereby cause people not to have eggs, a staple of life. Therefore, you're not allowed to do such. Taner Rabbanan in the first wide line, Mitarin al Pragmatia. We cry out, we blow shofar regarding Pragmatia. If the prices drop significantly, signifying forms of depression, Vafil b'Shabbos, Amar Rav Yechon Klon Kli Plishtan b'Bavel. Says Rav Yechon, an example of this is Klei Pishtan in Bavel, V'Yayin V'Shemen, Beretz Yisrael. These were the items that the main staples of income. Amar Rav Yosef, who dissolved the Kam Asar V'Shita. Says Rav Yosef, what does it mean that the prices fell? It means they fell to such an extent that something that was worth 10 is now worth 6. It fell to 60% of its original value. Taner Rabbanan, the third wide line, in Yotzim Eretz L'Chol, and Kinavdu Sasayim B'Sela. One should not go and leave Eretz Yisrael for business purposes, unless Amdu Sasayim B'Sela, unless the cost is so exorbitant that 2 savui costs a sela. Amar Rav Shimon says Rav Shimon, when is this? That's when there's no wheat that one could purchase. Aval, says Rav Shimon, says Rav Shimon, no. even if the cost is very high, but there is wheat to buy, should not leave on such a reason. Similarly, Rajbi says, Elimelech, Mechalyoin v'Chilyoin. Elimelech, Chalyoin, and Chilyoin left Eretz Yisrael in Nach when there was no food and moved to Mayav. Gedali Hadar Hayu, says Rashbi, they were the Gedali Hadar Parnase Hadar Hayu, and they were the caretakers of Hadar. Meiman Enshu. What's the reason they were punished? That after they went to Mayav, they died shortly thereafter. Sheyotzi Me'eretz L'chutz La'aretz, bringing out the extreme nature, the Isser, that one is not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Taim Kol Ir Aleihem, says the pasuk. Entire city was in an uproar of a Tamarna Azois Nami, and they said, "Could this be Nami?" Explains the Gemara, what does this mean? Maya Azois Nami, what does that mean? Amr Rav Yitzchak Amru, Chazidem Nami Shatzim Eretz Yisrael L'chol. Could it be you saw that Nami left Eretz Yisrael L'chol? Maya also, what happened to her? So what do we see? We see that they were punished for leaving Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara bringing out the importance of not leaving Eretz Yisrael, even for a monetary pursuit, of course. This is not a simple question. Something to be discussed with a Rav, a Rebbe, a Manhig, because obviously, lahalacha, there are concerns, whether there is extreme monetary concerns, chinuch concerns, etc. Rav Yitzchak teaches Rav Yitzchak. Once we're dealing with a story from Ross, says the Gemara, the day that Ross came to Eretz Yisrael, that was the day that the wife of Bayaz died. That's what people said. This is why people say that before the one has died already, Kaimu, Banu, Manu Baisaihu, the replacement is already present. You see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu works in wondrous ways, that before the one is gone, the next is ready, waiting to take the place. Amar Rabba Baravuna, Amar Rav, Amar Rav, if sons are Boyaz, my Kamashlan, Kidach Rabba Ravuna, Amar Rabba Ravuna, what's his teaching us? When we teach you if son is Boyaz, Amar Rav, may have Esher Mishtayas, Asa Boyaz Labanov. Boyaz made 120 feasts for his children. He had 60 children. Shnemar, V'ilay Shleishim Banim, 30 sons, Shleishim Banis, 30 daughters, Shalach HaChutza, Shleishim Banis, Eviyu Labanov, Minachotz. He sent them Chutza abroad, and Shleishim Banis, Eviyu Labanov, Minachotz, and 30 daughters he brought for his sons. Vayishvad Yisrael Shavashanim, and Boyaz judged Klal Yisrael for 7 years. V'cholachas v'achas also Shnei Mishtayis. For each of one of the children, he made 2 feasts. Echad, one of the feasts was where? Bebeis Aviv, Echad bebeis Chamav, one of his father's house, and one of his father-in-law's house. Ubakulan Lozimin es Meneach, and to all these feasts, 60 times 2, 120 feasts. Teaches the Gemara, Boyaz did not invite Manoach. Manoach was the one that did not have any children. Eventually, he's going to become the father of Shimshon HaGibar. Amar, if son Boyaz said, Kunna, Akra b'may parali, this sterile mule, referring to Manoach that had no children, how can he repay me? He has no children, that he's going to make a feast and invite me in return. So why should I invite him? Obviously, a callous and not such a wonderful attitude. Because he can't invite you back, you're not going to invite him. So Tana toiches the brace of Kula Mesu B'chayav, and all of them, all of those children, 60 children, Rahman al-Atzlan, died in Boyaz's lifetime. That's what people say, that if in your life you have 60 children, shitin lamlacha, what are they there for you if they're going to die? Go and have one more child, be more accomplished than all 60. Of course, who was Oivad, who ended up being the child of Boyaz and Ros, who was eventually the grandfather of David HaMelech. Says the Gemara, Amar, again, another Simin Melech Avram, as a Shanim Sheniftar, Nasei Levadoi. Again, another Simin, a constant reminder we're having the past few days, how much we have to dive into Simanim to remember our Torah. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav, Amar Rav Eli Melech v'Shalmainu Ploini Almaini v'Avinam on Kulubane Nachshem ben Amina Dav Eli Melech Salmain, who is the father of Boyaz, Ploini Almaini, the father of Naami, were all the children of Nachshon ben Aminadav. Hein, Micah, Marshall, what's the Chiddush? Teaches the mother, even if you have schos avos, Elimelech, still you're not going to have that schos if you leave Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz. Statement number 1. Rav Chanan bar Rava teaches another din. We're going to have 5 Divrei Haggadah from Rav Chanan bar Rava. Amar Rav Eimei Davram Amasloi bas Karnavai, which of course is always a nice trivia question. Who is the mother of Avram Avinu? We don't find it in the Torah explicitly. Teaches Rav Chanan bar Rava. Her name was Amasloi, the daughter of Karnavai. Emei Dahaman was Asloi bas Arbasi. Simanech, and the way that you remember this, another simin, Tahar. The Tameh, the raven, is the Tameh, is the grandmother of the Tameh Haman. That's how you remember the Maslai bas Karnavai, referring to the, Maslai bas Orvisi, the raven, the impure animal. And Tahar, the Karnavai, which is a sheep, a kerem, which is a pure animal, is the mother of the pure one of Avram Avinu. Amy de David, who's the mother of David Amelech, Nitzvas Abbas Adoel, Shema was her name. Amy de Shimshain, Salelphinis, Va'achte Nashyon. And her sister was Nachshon. The Mainaf Gemina says the Gemara, 5 lines on the bottom. The Tshuvas Aminim, to respond to the Minim, to those, to the heretics, etc. Avram Avinu. Nachvash teaches Rav Chanan bar Rava Merav. Avram was Nachvash. Avram was put into prison for 10 years. Shalish bekuta, 3 years in Kuta, Vesheva bekardai, Ravdimi min hardai, and what happened to our highlight? Ravdimi min hardai, Masni Yevcha, the opposite, that it was 7 in Kuta and 3 in Kardai. Amar Rav Chisda Ivra Ziri de Kuta, says Rav Chisda, the place of Ivri Ziri of Kuta, Zehu, is the place called Urkasta that we find in the Torah. A fourth statement, Amdu, on the day that he was nifter, called Gedeli Umas Elam Beshura, they all stood in a line of Amra Aylam, Sha'avad Min Hagai, Manhigai, they all stood and said, woe is to the world, Sha'avad Manhigai, Va'ayilai Litzvina, and woe is to the sheep, the ship, not the sheep, the ship, Sha'avad Kivarinta, the person who drives the boat, a line you might have heard by different times, and so on is nifter. They write this line, the same line by Avram Avinu about a manig, about a leader. Ayalai, what we have lost. Shavit Kaberninta. Continues the basik. Hashem is over all the leaders. Amar Chanan bar Rav Amar Rav Afilu Reish Gargusa. We're on Tzadi Aleph Amebei, the third line. Even the one in charge of irrigation, Mishmei Mukmilah, is appointed by Hashem. As we see in the pasuk, Misnasei L'chol Reish, everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara, we said a few moments ago that Elimelech, Machlin, and Chilyain left Eretz Yisrael, they were punished. It says the Gemara in the fourth line, Amar Ravin, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Karche, Chas v'Shalom. That's not what happened. Shavilu matzah suben lo yatsu. For even if they found bran, they would not have left. Elam neiman enshu. So why were they punished? Meaning there was no food, mamish. So they were allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. So why are they nenshu? Shailan lavakesh rachlim al deiran, because they should have davened more for their generation of leibikshu shenemar, as the pasuk teaches us. V'zacha yatzilcha kibutzayich. As the pasuk teaches us, when you cry out, everyone will be saved. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba Barachana Amar Rav Yechanan Leishanu, regarding leaving Eretz Yisrael for a food, Elamois Bizol Peres B'Yoiker. Aval Mais B'Yoiker, Afilu Amdu Arba Sam Besela Yoitzim. But if it's the opposite, that the fruit value has just gone up, if the money value is so high, if it's literally a depression that there's no money, then even if the value of the fruit has not risen so high, one can leave Eretz Yisrael. And another statement we have over here for the 5 statements of Rav Yechanan. Dam Rav Yechon Nihirna Kad Avi Kaimin Arba San Besela. I remember when 4 saw wheat stood at the Sela of Avinifishi, Nifiche, Kifon Bitveria, B'Delas Isser. Yet, in Tveria, there were people that their stomachs were swollen from the fact there was no money to buy food. And I remember the time when workers would not hire themselves out, Lebindach, Karta, to the east of the city, Meireach, Pita, Maiton, due to the smell of bread that would cause them to die. They had no food, they would smell bread, and that would cause them to die. Again, such a high level of lack of food and famine. I remember, says Rav Yechon, when a child would cut open a karev, and a piece of fruit honey would flow al train durayu over his 2 arms. This is Rav Yechon bemoaning how the fruits of Eretz Yisrael used to be so plentiful. V'amar Rav Elazar. Now we continue Rav Elazar, another Amayr in Hirnikan Avinatel Orva Basra. He remembers when he would take a piece of meat, V'nagir Chuta Demishcha, Meireshura V'ad La'ara, and the oil would flow from the top of the wall all the way to the ground. How incredible the meat was! V'nagir Chuta Demishcha, Meireshura V'ad La'ara, and the fat would flow. Says Rav Yechon, I remember when a boy and girl would play together in the marketplace, Kvar Sheva Esrei, even 16 or 17 years old, and they would not say, and they were on such a high level. Says Rav Yechon that during the original time in Eretz Yisrael, that those in Tveria would be of such pure nature that even the 16 and 17-year-olds would be able to be playing together without causing any level of avera. Says Rav Yechon, I remember they used to say in the Beis Medrash, they accept those who worship with the Zar Nafal B'Dayu, they fall into their hands. Place your trust in them, wherever our heirs will be theirs, that those who worship the Avodah Zarah had no kiyum. Continues the Gemara Ksev. We're 5 lines to the medium-sized lines. Going back for a moment to Machlon and Chilyain, the story of Ross, Machlon and Chilyain, Uksev Yayish V'Saraf. Says the Gemara, who are these people? Ravu Shmuel Chan Machlon Chilyain Shimon V'Lamanekun and Shimon Saraf V'Yayiv Yayish and Isiachim and Agula Saraf and Ischayvu Sreifa Lamakim. Chayav Misa, and they despaired from Gula. V'chanam Yayish V'Saraf Shimon V'Lamanekun Shimon Machlon V'Chilyain. So are they for Machlon V'Chilyain? Machlon Shas Gufa and Chulin V'Chilyain Shad Ischayv Aleim Kilyain Lamakam. That they were called Machlon and Chilyain. Why? Because they made their bodies profane, Chulin, and because they were deserving to be destroyed before Hashem. Says the Gemara, Tanya, I'll teach you a price. Come on, Demer Machlon V'Chilyain Shimon. The Tanya might have said, what's the name of the apostle? Yekim Anshe Kuziva V'Yayish V'Saraf Shabal Lulamayev. What is the meaning of the apostle? The Yoikam, those who Chaziva Yayish and Saraf, who were Bayal Mayav, they had relations with Mayav, Yashru Lehem, Lechem V'Advarim, Atikim, and Yeshuvu Lechem. Now these are very old matters. Says the Gemara V'Yoikim, this is Yeshua. Shakim Shvual, Anshe Givain. He made the people of Givain swear. Vanshe Kuziva, Ilu Anshe Givain. Shekazuli Yeshua, they had to swear to Yeshua. V'Yayash, on the first very wide line, V'Sar V'Lamakla V'Chilyain. V'Lamanikra Shman Yayash. V'Sara V'Yash Yasrum in Agula Sarvish and Chayvu Sreifa Lamakim. So we see, Mamish, like the Bryce that we just said, or Raya, that Yayash and Syria, the Yayash and Saraf were not their real names. Ashabalu Lamayav Shanasu Nasha Mayavais, they married Mayavi woman, Vyashul Lechem, Zuras Amavia, Shashav Nitziku Bebeis Lechem, Yehuda, she came back. Badvar Matik and Dvar Malalo, Atik Yaiman Amran, Dechsev, Chasi David Avdi, Uksev Shteb, and Isaiah Hanim Sais. We continue at the 2 dots, continuing, psukim from Divrei Ayamim, Hema Yoitzrim, Yoshin Etiem, Ugedera, says the Pasuk. The potters, the dwellers, by the trees and the fences, and Mamelach Memelachtai Sham Yashu Sham sat there. Hema Yoitzrim Elu b'nei Yonadav ben Rechav. What are the Yoitzrim? These are the children of Yonadav ben Rechav. Shenatzu Shvuas Avihem, who listened to the shua of their father Yeshu Netiyim, what says that Shleimai, Shedaimer Netiyah b'Malchusay v'Gedera Zu Sanhedrin Shegader Pirtzaseim Shel Yisrael, the Sanhedrin, which of course erects defenses and safeguards Klal Yisrael. Mamelch Mamlachta Yeshu Sham Zurasa Mavia Sharasa Mamalchus Shleima ben Benai Shel ben Benah, that she saw the Malchus of Shleimai HaMelech Shenemar, as the pasuk says. I'm sorry, I'm having some highlighting issues. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Vayishev, excuse me, Kisei le'im hamelech v'amrav Lazar le'ima shal malchus, referring to Rus, the great grandmother of Shloimeh HaMelech. And we go back to Eretz Yisrael for a few moments. Tanur Rabbanan, v'chaltem in atvua yashan, says the pasuk, will eat from the crop of old, b'loi salmintoin, will have no salmilton. What is that? My b'loi salmilton, says Gemara. Rav Nachman Amar b'loi resinta, no worms, anything to infest the crop. Rav Sheshes Amar b'loi shedifa, there would be no decay in the crop. Tani Kavasi de Rav Sheshes, Tani Kavasi de Rav Nachman. 6 lines into the parak. Tani Kavasi de Rav Nachman, Chalti Yashan Yachal Yisrael Mitzap in the Chodosh, Mimnei Yashan Shekala. First the pasuk, last week's parsha, Teichach v'Chalti and Yashan, you would think that people will look back to the new crop because the old one was destroyed. Tamuleimar says the pasuk, no. Adbat Tvua Shatava Tvua Meileo. Tani Kavasi de Sheshes v'Chalti and Tvua Yashan Yachal Yisrael Mitzap in the Chodosh, Mimnei Yashan Shera. Because the old crop went bad. And we conclude, says the Gemara, anything which is Yusha Mechaverai, which is old, very old, have a Yafa Mechaverai, is going to be even greater. This is things that are customary to age. Kol makom yashan name that chadash. Teitziyu malam berzati sheyoitzes malayin yashan v'grana is malayin chadash. The mamish, the old grain was still there when the new grain came through. Vayisrael imrim heich naitzi, and the Klal Yisrael, the Yidden, are going to say, I'm going to take out this one for the new one. There's going to be so much crap. Everything that is aged is better, aside for dates, beer, and small fish, which when they get old, they are nasty. To end on such a high note, we should get back to all the brachas of Eretz Yisrael, B'siyata D'Shmaya, as we'll continue with the 6th parak, Emir Hashem.